Magistrate Lyra had presided over 300 cases in her 2 years on the bench. Theft, fraud, assault, property disputes. She'd judged them all with the cold clarity the law demanded, never letting emotion cloud her decisions. Then came the bread case. It should have been simple. The evidence was clear. Mara, a widow with 3 children, had stolen 2 loaves of bread from merchant Petros's stall. Witnesses confirmed it. The merchant demanded justice. The law was explicit. Theft meant 10 lashes and imprisonment, plus repayment of triple the stolen value. Simple, clear, just. Except Lyra had looked into Mara's eyes during testimony and used the magistrate's gift, the oath-binding magic that let her sense truth from lies. And what she'd sensed made her hands shake as she held the judgment scroll. Truth. Every word the woman spoke was absolute truth. My children haven't eaten in 3 days. My husband died in the harbor collapse. No one will hire a widow with 3 small children. I begged. I offered to work. I tried everything. They were starving. I watched my youngest stop crying because he was too weak. So I took the bread. I don't deny it. I'm guilty. But my children are alive. Truth. Devastating, desperate truth. The law demanded punishment. 10 lashes would likely kill a woman already weakened by starvation. Imprisonment meant her children would starve anyway, alone. Triple repayment of 2 copper coins worth of bread, 6 coppers she'd never have, would doom them to permanent debt slavery. The law demanded this. But was it just? Lyra had asked for 3 days to consider her judgment. The request itself was unusual. Most cases were decided immediately. But this one had spread through Atlantea like fire through dry grain. The merchants, led by Petros, demanded strict enforcement. If we show mercy to thieves, we invite chaos. Property rights must be absolute. The law protects us all. The common people, those who lived one missed harvest from starvation themselves, rallied behind Mara. The law should protect people, not just property. What good is justice if it kills children? The Senate watched carefully. Lyra's judgment would set precedent. Every future theft case would reference it. Outside the courthouse, crowds had gathered. Merchants on one side, common citizens on the other. The city watch maintained an uneasy peace between them. 3 days to decide. The law was clear. Her conscience screamed against it. And Lyra knew with absolute certainty that whatever she decided would define not just this case, but the kind of magistrate she was, the kind of city Atlantea would become. On her desk lay the judgment scroll, still blank. In her hand, the seal that would make her decision law. Tomorrow, she would choose. The city held its breath. Before we continue, if you love stories from ancient Greek, hit subscribe now, because Magistrate Lyra is about to make a judgment that will define justice itself. Let me take you back to show you how she got here. 2 years earlier, Lyra stood in the Senate chamber, 23 years old and terrified as the chief magistrate prepared to administer the oath that would change her life forever. "Do you understand what you're accepting?" Chief Magistrate Theron asked. He was 70, with eyes that had judged 10,000 cases. The magistrate's oath isn't merely ceremonial, it binds you, permanently. "I understand," Lyra said, though her voice shook. "Once sworn, you will sense lies as physical discomfort. The more severe the deception, the sharper the pain. Testimony given under oath will reveal itself as truth or falsehood. You cannot unknow what you sense. You cannot ignore it. The magic will compel you to acknowledge truth even when truth is inconvenient." "Why?" asked Senator Demos, one of the 5 senators overseeing the appointment. "Because justice requires truth, and humans are skilled liars. We deceive ourselves as easily as we deceive others. The magistrate's oath removes that capacity. It makes us instruments of truth whether we like it or not." Lyra thought of her father, a grain merchant who'd lost everything to a dishonest partner's lies. No magistrate had caught the deception. Her father had died in debt, disgraced, his honor destroyed by falsehoods no one could prove. She'd vowed then to become a magistrate, to be someone who could distinguish truth from lies, to prevent what happened to her father from happening to others. "I'm ready," she said. Theron placed his hand on her head. The other 5 magistrates formed a circle around her. Ancient words in the old tongue echoed through the chamber, words of binding and truth and justice. The magic hit like lightning. Lyra gasped as something fundamental shifted inside her. She could feel it settling into her bones, her blood, her very soul. The oath wasn't external, it became part of her. "Speak a lie," Theron commanded. "The sky is..." She couldn't. Her throat closed, her chest tightened. Physical pain radiated through her body at the mere attempt to deceive. "Good, you're bound. From this moment you serve truth and law above all else. Your judgment must be impartial, guided by evidence and statute, untainted by emotion or personal feeling. You are no longer just Lyra, you are Magistrate Lyra, instrument of justice." She thought she understood what that meant. She'd been wrong. The oath had given her the power to sense truth, but it hadn't prepared her for the day when truth and justice would stand on opposite sides. The case file arrived on a morning like any other. "Theft case," her clerk announced, placing the scroll on her desk. "Merchant Petros versus Mara of the Harbor District. Straightforward, should be quick." Lyra opened the scroll and read the details. Mara, widow, age 28, 3 children, ages 2, 4, and 6, stole 2 loaves of bread from Petros's stall in the market. Multiple witnesses, defendant admits guilt. Straightforward, as Tao said. The hearing was set for the next morning. Lyra reviewed the relevant statutes. Theft of property valued under 1 silver drachma carried a penalty of 10 lashes and imprisonment ranging from 1 month to 6 months, plus restitution of triple the stolen value. The magistrate had discretion on the length of imprisonment, but the lashes and triple repayment were mandatory. That night, Lyra walked through the market district as she often did, observing the city she served. She passed Petros's bakery. He was a respected merchant, 3rd generation. His family had provided bread for Atlantea for 60 years. She also passed through the harbor district, saw the collapsed warehouse that killed 17 men 3 months ago, including many family breadwinners. Saw the widows and orphans struggling in the aftermath. "The Senate promised aid," an old woman told her neighbor as Lyra passed. "Where is it? My daughter's family is starving." "Aid takes time to approve. Forms, votes, procedures. Meanwhile, children go hungry." Lyra filed the observation away. Context, but not relevant to the law. The law didn't make exceptions for hardship. That way led to chaos, to magistrates deciding based on sympathy rather than statute. The next morning, Mara stood before her bench, thin, exhausted, 3 small children clinging to her ragged dress. Petros stood on the other side, well-fed, prosperous, righteous in his anger. "She stole from me," he declared, "in plain sight, bold as brass. If you don't punish her, you tell every thief in Atlantea that stealing is acceptable." "I don't deny it," Mara said quietly. "I took the bread. I'm guilty. I only ask, my children, what happens to them if I'm imprisoned? They have no one else." Lyra called Mara forward to give testimony under oath. The moment Mara began speaking, Lyra felt it. Truth. Absolute, undeniable truth in every desperate word. And her conscience began to scream. "State your testimony," Lyra activated the oath binding. The air shimmered slightly around Mara as the magic took hold. "3 months ago, my husband died in the warehouse collapse," Mara began. Lyra felt truth resonate through the oath. "He was a dock worker. We had some savings, but funerals are expensive. I spent everything laying him to rest properly." Truth. Every word was absolute truth. "I tried to find work. I'm strong, I can haul and lift, but no one hires women for dock work. I tried the markets, offering to clean or carry, but I have 3 children and no one will watch them. I can't leave them alone, they're too young, so I have to bring them with me and merchants say children are distractions." Truth. Every word was absolute. "I went to the temple for aid. They gave us 2 meals. Then they said they had too many in need. They couldn't help everyone. I went to wealthy households, offered to scrub floors for table scraps. Some gave me a coin out of pity. It wasn't enough." The oath confirmed each desperate statement. Lyra's head began to ache, a warning that difficult truth was coming. 4 days ago, my youngest stopped crying. Just stopped. Too weak from hunger to even cry. I laid there, silent, his eyes open but empty. I realized he was dying. They were all dying, and I was watching it happen because I was following the rules. Truth blazed through the oath binding so intense Lyra gripped her bench to steady herself. So I went to the market. I tried one more time to find work. Master Petros needed someone to sweep his shop. I offered. He asked if I had children. I said yes. He said no, he wouldn't have children underfoot. I begged. He refused. His bread was right there, fresh and warm, and my children were starving. So I took 2 loaves and ran. Truth. Devastating, complete truth. I fed my children. They're alive because I'm a thief. I don't regret taking the bread. I regret that I live in a city where children starve while bread goes to those who can pay, even as some throw half-eaten loaves to dogs. The courtroom was silent. Even Petros looked uncomfortable. Lyra released the oath binding, and Mara stepped back, trembling from the magical exposure. "Merchant Petros, do you wish to give testimony?" "No need," he said. "She admits her guilt. That's all that matters. Apply the law. Apply the law." The words echoed in Lyra's mind as she looked at 3 small children, now fed, looking at their mother with the desperate trust only children possess. Apply the law. She requested 3 days. The city began to choose sides. The merchants came first. A delegation of 15, led by Petros, arrived at the courthouse the day after the hearing. Lyra received them in her chambers as protocol demanded. "Magistrate Lyra," began formally, "we respect your position and your judgment, but we must speak plainly. Commerce requires trust. That trust requires protection of property rights. If theft goes unpunished, especially theft from hard-working merchants, the entire marketplace becomes unsafe." "I understand your concern," Lyra replied carefully. "Do you?" Another merchant, Helena, who sold pottery, stepped forward. "3 times this month I've had goods stolen. Small things, a cup here, a bowl there, but it adds up. I'm a widow too, magistrate. I also struggle, but I don't steal, I work. If we excuse theft because someone is desperate, where does it end? Can I steal from wealthier merchants because I'm less wealthy? Can anyone take anything from anyone they deem better off?" The argument was sound. Lyra knew it. Property rights were foundational to civil society. Without them, chaos. "The law is clear," she said. "I will apply the law." The merchants left satisfied. That afternoon, the common people came. Not as a formal delegation, but as a crowd. 50 at first, then 100 gathering outside the courthouse. They didn't threaten or shout. They simply stood, silent, watching. Among them, Lyra recognized faces. The baker's assistant, who sometimes brought her morning bread, the woman who sold flowers in the temple district, the dock workers who'd rebuilt after the collapse. One man stepped forward, old and weathered. "My name is Demos. I worked with Mara's husband. Good man. Died doing his job keeping the city fed with goods from the ships. Now his widow is called a thief for keeping her children alive. We're not asking you to ignore the law, magistrate. We're asking you to see that the law isn't just. There's a difference. The law isn't mine to change," Lyra said, "only to apply. Then what good is your position if you can't choose mercy when mercy is right?" She had no answer. That evening, Chief Magistrate Theron summoned her to his chambers. "The Senate is watching this case," he said without preamble. "Your judgment will set precedent. Choose harshly, and you'll uphold the law's integrity. Choose mercy, and you'll be removed from your position for dereliction of duty. Worse, you'll invite every thief to claim desperation as defense. What would you do?" she asked. "I would remember why I took the oath, to serve truth and law, not emotion." He paused. "But I'm glad this choice is yours, not mine." Lyra spent that night staring at the judgment scroll, quill in hand, unable to write a single word. Lyra did something unusual for a magistrate. She investigated. "You're not required to," Theo protested when she announced her intention. "The facts are clear. Your role is to judge based on presented evidence, not to seek more. The facts tell me what happened. They don't tell me why." Lyra gathered her cloak. I need to understand the full truth before I can deliver just judgment. She started at the harbor, at the collapsed warehouse. The collapse had been ruled an accident. Old structure, heavy rain, unfortunate, but no one's fault. 17 men dead, dozens of families left without providers. Did the Senate provide the promised aid? Lyra asked the harbor master. They voted to allocate funds 3 months ago. Still in committee, arguing about distribution procedures. You know how it goes. By the time they actually distribute coins, it'll be 6 months after the collapse. Meanwhile, families starve. Lyra visited the temple where Mara had sought help. We do what we can, the priestess said defensively, but we have limited resources. 30 families came seeking aid after the collapse. We can't feed them all indefinitely. We gave what we could, then had to turn people away. What else could we do? Lyra understood. The priestess wasn't cruel, just overwhelmed. She visited the market, spoke with merchants about their hiring practices. I'd hire widows if I could, but they have children. Children need supervision. They can't work full days. It's not cruelty, it's practicality. My business can't absorb that. Everywhere she went, Lyra found the same pattern. No one was deliberately evil. Everyone had reasonable explanations for their choices. The Senate wasn't malicious, just bureaucratic. The temple wasn't heartless, just under-resourced. The merchants weren't cruel, just practical. And yet the system they'd created together allowed children to starve in a city of plenty. That night, Lyra reviewed Atlantis's laws regarding poverty relief. They existed technically, but they were old, underfunded, tangled in so much procedure that accessing them took months. She reviewed theft laws. They'd been written 200 years ago when Atlantis was smaller, when community bonds were stronger, when a widow wouldn't be left completely alone. The laws hadn't kept pace with reality. But Lyra's job wasn't to fix that. Her job was to apply the law as written, even if the law itself was part of the problem. She returned to her chambers and finally picked up the quill. She had a judgment to write. The city waited to see if she would choose law or justice, as if they were two different things. If you're already feeling the weight of this impossible choice, tap that like button, because tomorrow Lyra has to make a decision that will define her career, her conscience, and her city's soul. The courtroom was packed. Citizens stood in every available space. Magistrates' guards kept order, barely. The tension was physical, like breathing before a storm. Lyra entered from her chambers and took her seat. Mara stood in the defendant's position, thin and terrified. Petros stood opposite, confident in law's righteousness. 3 small children clung to their mother's ragged dress. Lyra held the judgment scroll. Her hand trembled slightly. I have reached my judgment in the case of Merchant Petros versus Mara of the Harbor District. Her voice carried through the silent hall. The facts are not disputed. The defendant stole 2 loaves of bread, value 2 copper coins, from the plaintiff's stall. Multiple witnesses confirmed this. The defendant admits guilt. Under Atlantean law, specifically Statute 47 of the Commercial Code, theft of property valued under 1 silver drachma carries mandatory punishment of 10 lashes, imprisonment of 1 to 6 months, and restitution of triple the stolen value. The merchants nodded satisfied. The common people looked devastated. However, Lyra continued, and the word hung in the air, the law also recognizes the principle of mitigating circumstances. Muttering erupted. Chief Magistrate Theron leaned forward in the observer's gallery, his face unreadable. The defendant acted out of genuine necessity to preserve life. 3 children faced starvation. No aid was available through legal means. The defendant exhausted all legitimate options before resorting to theft. The oath binding confirms every aspect of her testimony as absolute truth. Lyra looked at Petros. The law exists to protect society, but society consists of people, not merely property. Justice that protects property by allowing people to die is not justice. It is something else entirely. She took a breath. This was it, the moment that would define her. Therefore, my judgment is as follows. The defendant is guilty of theft. This guilt is undisputed. However, in recognition of the extraordinary circumstances, I impose the minimum possible sentence. No lashes, imprisonment of 1 day already served during initial detention, restitution of 6 copper coins to be paid through labor at Merchant Petros's bakery 1 hour daily, with the remainder of her time available to care for her children. Furthermore, I recommend to the Senate immediate implementation of emergency aid for harbor collapse families." The hall exploded. Merchants stood in outrage. "This is not justice, this is abandoning law." Common people cheered. "Finally, a magistrate who sees people, not just rules." Petros's face was purple with rage. "I reject this judgment. I appeal to the chief magistrate." Lyra sealed the scroll with her magistrate's mark. "Appeal noted. Until overturned, this judgment stands." She stood and walked from the bench as chaos erupted behind her. In her chambers, she collapsed into her chair, hands shaking. She'd made her choice. Now she'd face the consequences. The Senate summoned her the next morning. 5 senators sat in judgment, the same 5 who'd overseen her oath 2 years ago. Chief Magistrate Theron sat to the side, his face carved from stone. Senator Demos spoke first. "Magistrate Lyra, you understand why you're here." "I do." "Your judgment in the theft case has created chaos. Merchants are threatening to close shops in protest. They claim you've made property rights meaningless. They demand your removal of office." "I applied the law as I believed justice required," Lyra said steadily. "You rewrote the law to fit your conscience," Senator Alexios countered. "Statute 47 is clear. Mandatory punishments exist for a reason, to ensure consistency and to prevent exactly this kind of personal judgment from corrupting legal proceedings. Statute 47 doesn't account for cases of genuine necessity. The principle of mitigating circumstances has never been applied to excuse theft." Alexios stood, angry. "If we allow this precedent, every thief in Atlantea will claim desperation. How do we distinguish genuine need from convenient excuse?" "The oath binding," Lyra replied. "I sensed absolute truth in every word the defendant spoke. Her desperation was real. Her children's starvation was real. The complete absence of any alternative was real. That's not a convenient excuse. That's the truth the magistrate's oath compels me to acknowledge." Senator Helena, older and thoughtful, leaned forward. "That's an interesting argument. You're saying the oath itself guided your judgment? That you couldn't ignore truth, even if it conflicted with strict statutory interpretation?" "Yes, the oath binds me to truth and justice. Sometimes those conflict with the letter of law, even if they honor its spirit." "The spirit of law?" Demos shook his head. "Laws are words, magistrate, precise words. We don't interpret spirit, we apply letter. Otherwise, law becomes whatever each magistrate feels is right, and consistency dies." Chief Magistrate Theron finally spoke. "Magistrate Lyra, your oath binds you to truth. It also binds you to law. When those conflict, which takes precedence?" The question sat heavy in the chamber. "I don't believe they conflict," Lyra said quietly. "I believe law that ignores truth isn't law. It's tyranny dressed in legal language." The senators exchanged looks. "We'll deliberate," Demos said. "You're dismissed. Expect our decision within 3 days. Until then, you're suspended from hearing cases. This chamber will decide if you remain a magistrate." Lyra bowed and left. Outside, 2 crowds waited. Merchants demanding her removal, common citizens demanding she be upheld. The city had torn itself in half, and she'd been the blade that split it. Lyra spent her suspension walking Atlantea's streets, seeing her city with new eyes. In the wealthy district, she watched a noble throw half a loaf of bread to dogs while servants swept the remainder into trash bins. Enough food wasted in one household to feed Mara's children for a week. In the market, she watched Petros sell dozens of loaves, his shop prosperous and busy. He could easily absorb the loss of 2 loaves. To him, it was principle. To Mara, it was survival. In the harbor district, she found Mara working her court-mandated hour at Petros's bakery. The children played nearby, fed and healthy. Mara saw Lyra and stopped, nervous. "I wanted to thank you, even if they remove you from office for it. You saw me as a person, not just a thief. That's more than anyone else did." "I might have destroyed my career for you," Lyra replied, not unkindly. "I know, I'm sorry for that. But magistrate, your judgment said something important. It said that in Atlantea, human life matters more than property. Even if they overturn it, even if they remove you, that message is out there now. People heard it. That's worth something. Was it? Lyra wasn't sure. That evening, an unexpected visitor arrived at her chambers, Chief Magistrate Theron. "I'm not supposed to discuss the Senate's deliberations," he said, settling into a chair, "but I'm old and I bend rules when conscience demands it." "What will they decide?" "They're split. 2 want you removed, 2 want you upheld. Deimos is undecided." Theron looked at her seriously. "Tell me honestly, do you regret your judgment?" Lyra thought carefully. "I regret the chaos it caused. I regret dividing the city, but the judgment itself? No. I looked into that woman's eyes and sensed complete, desperate truth. I couldn't sentence her to death by law when law itself had failed her first." "Law itself failed her?" "Yes. We have poverty relief laws that take 6 months to access. We have emergency aid that never arrives. We have a system that lets children starve while grain rots in warehouses awaiting proper paperwork. The law failed Mara before she ever stole bread. My judgment acknowledged that truth." Theron was quiet for a long moment. "When I gave you the oath, I told you it would compel you to acknowledge truth, even inconvenient truth. I didn't tell you that sometimes the most inconvenient truth is that our entire system is broken, that law itself can be unjust." "What do I do with that truth?" "Whatever your conscience demands. That's all any of us can do." He stood to leave, then paused. "The Senate votes tomorrow. Whatever happens, know this. You've been a better magistrate in 2 years than many are in 20, because you remember that law serves people, not the other way around." After he left, Lyra sat alone, waiting for tomorrow's verdict. On her desk, a new case file waited. Another theft, another desperate person. The cycle continued. Unless someone changed it. Is Lyra right to judge based on conscience, or should law be applied without exception? There's no easy answer. Drop your thoughts in the comments. The Senate chamber was packed when Lyra arrived for their verdict. Senator Deimos stood to deliver judgment. "Magistrate Lyra, we have deliberated extensively on your case. This decision affects not just you, but the principle of how justice is administered in Atlantea." Lyra stood straight, prepared for removal. 3 arguments were central to our deliberations. First, the argument for strict statutory interpretation. Law must be consistent. Magistrates cannot rewrite statutes based on personal sympathy. Second, the argument for judicial discretion. Magistrates must interpret law in context, applying not just its letter, but its purpose. Third, the argument about the magistrate's oath itself and what it compels you to acknowledge. Deimos looked directly at Lyra. "Your oath binds you to truth and justice. You argue these aligned in your judgment. Critics argue you elevated personal conscience above written law. After extensive debate, we reached a decision. 3 senators voting, with myself as tiebreaker." The chamber held its collective breath. "We uphold your judgment." The hall exploded. Merchants shouted in protest. Common people cheered. Deimos raised his hand for silence. "However, this comes with conditions. Your judgment is upheld specifically because the oath binding confirmed extraordinary circumstances. The principle of necessity as a defense to theft is now recognized in Atlantean law, but only when confirmed through magistrates' oath binding. This prevents false claims of desperation." He continued, "Furthermore, this judgment has revealed systemic failures in our poverty relief systems. The Senate is establishing an emergency committee to reform aid distribution. We're allocating funds for immediate assistance to harbor collapse families, and we're creating an office to review laws that may have become unjust through societal change." Lyra felt tears threatening. "Thank you, Senator." "Don't thank me. Your judgment forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our city. That's valuable, even if it's painful." Deimos looked at the assembled crowd. "Let this be understood. Justice and law are not always the same thing. When they diverge, it's the law that must change, not our understanding of justice. Magistrate Lyra reminded us of that principle." Petro stood, angry but controlled. "So theft is now acceptable if the thief is desperate enough?" "No," Lyra answered before Deimos could. Theft remains a crime, but the law now recognizes that when society fails to provide for basic survival, and when every legal option has been exhausted, and when the only choice is steal or watch loved ones die, the person who steals is not the same as a person who steals from greed. The punishment must reflect that truth. "And how do we determine truth?" Petros demanded. Lyra touched her chest where the oath binding resided. "The same way we've always had, through the magistrate's oath, through the magic that compels us to acknowledge truth even when truth is inconvenient." 3 months later, Lyra presided over another theft case. Different defendant, different circumstances, but similar desperation. This time, she had precedent to guide her. This time, the city didn't divide. Because precedent wasn't just legal history, it was the city's declaration of its values. Atlantea had chosen to value people over property. It wasn't perfect. Some merchants remained angry, some citizens wanted even more lenient judgments, but it was progress. Mara finished her restitution. Petros, grudgingly, offered her part-time work. She'd never be wealthy, but her children would eat. One evening, as Lyra left the courthouse, she found Chief Magistrate Theron waiting. "Your judgment changed the city. It also changed what it means to be a magistrate. We're not just enforcers of written law anymore. We're guardians of justice itself, even when that means challenging the laws we enforce." "Is that what you wanted when you gave me the oath?" Lyra asked. "No, I wanted reliable judges who applied law consistently." Theron smiled. "What I got were magistrates with consciences. That's more dangerous, but it's also more human. And humanity, with all its messy compassion and inconvenient conscience, is what justice ultimately serves." Lyra returned to her chambers and found dozens of new case files waiting. Each one a person's life, a problem to solve, a truth to uncover. She picked up the first file and began reading. The law was clear. Her oath was binding. Her conscience was awake. And somewhere in the intersection of all three, justice lived. Not perfect justice, not easy justice, but real justice, fought for and earned one case at a time. Lyra marked her judgment on the first case. The city watched. And slowly, case by case, judgment by judgment, Atlantea learned that law without mercy was tyranny, but mercy without law was chaos. The balance between them was what they called justice, and it was worth fighting for. From one impossible case to a city transformed. If Magistrate Lyra's choice to honor both law and conscience moved you, hit subscribe for more stories of hard decisions that change everything. New tales of justice and courage every week.